Chapter 544, Expert. Klein had just sorted out his thoughts when Elend caught up with the two and said with a smile, "We've found the target. The investigation is over. I'll bring you back to the hotel first, and I'll bring the remuneration in 2 days. Also, it's best if you don't go out today." Klein maintained Jayaman Sparrow's character by only nodding slightly, without giving any verbal response. On the way back to the Wind of Azure Inn, Danitz clearly had some doubts or wistful thoughts on his mind. But due to the presence of Elend, who was part of the military, he could only change the subject and discuss with great interest about which pirates would end up being caught in the city's thorough sweep today. To him, they weren't friends as long as those guys didn't belong to the Golden Dream. They weren't worth sympathizing with. After entering the hotel room and watching Elend leave, he closed the door and said while clicking his tongue, "The Book of Calamity? Ancient elven ruins. This really is an interesting matter, but how did the elves end up like devils? Just by casually taking their book, a casual flip through it had caused that woman to go insane and lose control. What kind of image do you have of elves? Living in the mountains and seas, specializing in cooking, creatures who enjoy nature. Heth, according to Little Sun, the 8 ancient gods before the cataclysm were all very tyrannical, very cruel, and very evil. Among them was the elf king Soniathrim, and the elves who believed in him and viewed him as their king couldn't have been any better. One can make a comparison with the members of the Aurora Order. The Beyonder races, left behind by the Dark Epic, basically can't be associated with the good alignment that normal people have in mind. Klein replied in his mind. Of course, he didn't rule out the possibility that after the ancient gods' fall, the dragons, giants, elves, sanguine, and other living creatures would gradually extricate themselves from the negative effects and become more normal. However, this was only limited to the middle and lower levels, and it didn't include the demigod powerhouses. And the high elf that left behind the Book of Calamity was clearly the latter. With a thought, Klein suddenly realized something. Danitz understands Elvish. He recognized the title of the ancient goatskin book as the Book of Calamity. Vice Admiral Iceberg has actually taught her crew to such an extent. Not only does it include ancient Fasak, but she has also taught them Elvish, which can stir up the powers of nature. Perhaps Jotun and ancient Hermes are all part of the curriculum on the Golden Dream. They really are a bunch of pirates with knowledge and dreams. However, ma'am Captain, aren't you being a little overboard on certain subjects? Danitz is lacking in so many other aspects. That's right. The most important thing for a pirate, whose main job is to be a treasure hunter, has to be mastering the ancient languages. Klein ignored Danitz's comments and looked out the window. The sky remained gloomy, as if a heavy rain would fall at any time. It made one involuntarily feel suppressed. Klein nodded slightly, feeling slightly relaxed as he thought. Letitia has been found. Being aware of the ancient elven ruin on Saimim Island, the Church of Storms and the kingdom's military will likely use its connection to the place where Kalvatua is hiding to find the sea god that is becoming progressively crazier. Or they might use the ruin to speed up its collapse. That way, apart from the most fervent and pious sea god believers dying, the rest basically won't suffer any harm. Klein had originally thought of using the spirit world to locate sea god Kalvatua's hiding spot after it died before the official Beyonders did. He could then infiltrate it, taking the treasure with him. But even before the plan had begun, the appearance of the Book of Calamity pushed his plan to the verge of failure. Phew, it's fine. It only existed in my imagination, and it never belonged to me. It's fine if I don't get it. I don't even know what I'll get. Letting this matter get resolved this way is for the best. Klein withdrew his gaze from the weather, his mood calm and relaxed. He just inevitably felt a slight sense of loss. That day, he and Danitz followed Elend's advice and didn't head out again. They only remained in the inn. In Bayam City, there would be the sound of gunfire and explosions from time to time. This continued until the sky turned dark. The next morning, Klein got up on time and found that there were layers of clouds in the sky, and the sky remained dark. This meant that the confrontation between the Church of Storms Cardinal, high-ranking deacon of the mandated Punishers, John Cotman, and sea god Kalvatua was still ongoing. Klein felt pain in his stomach and prepared to head to the washroom with the newspapers. However, he gave up on that idea when he saw Danitz leisurely reading a newspaper while lying in a reclining chair, munching on a piece of white bread in his mouth. Reading the newspaper while on a toilet doesn't match J.M. Sparrow's persona. Although it would be boring, I mustn't slack off on acting. Sigh, I've once again found a difference in the behavior between my true self and my disguised identity. Klein summed it up in silence and went into the washroom. He took off his pants and sat down on the toilet, staring almost in a daze at the pale white wall in front of him, as if he could read words from it. At this moment, his spiritual perception was triggered. He hurriedly tapped his molars and activated his spirit vision. Two thick, long white bones appeared in front of him. They were the messenger's legs. The messenger stood there, its head passing through the ceiling, but its black flames and its eye sockets could still be seen. It lowered its head slightly and looked down at Klein, who was sitting on the toilet. Klein looked up, stunned for 2 seconds, his mind filled with a baffling thought. Should I act like a woman, hurriedly covering my nether regions, or should I just be open and fearless? Before he could make up his mind, the messenger dropped the letter, disintegrated into a pile of bones, and disappeared into the floor. It took a moment for Klein to react before he caught Mr. Azek's reply. This messenger is being more and more impolite. Can't you see that I'm using the toilet? Don't you know to knock on the door or to squeeze it through the crack under the door? Klein cursed in anger and amusement. After giving it some more thought, he felt that it would be putting the messenger in a tough spot to pass the letter through the crack in the door. The 4-meter-tall giant had to lie down in order to reach that position. Just thinking about it is rather funny. Well, the next time I write a letter, I'll add a paragraph so that Mr. Azek can educate the messenger so that he will be more polite. Klein unfurled the letter and read Azek's reply. According to the knowledge I've recalled, I can provide you with 2 methods. The first requires certain prerequisites. If a unique item belonging to you or someone else is located where sea god Kalvatua is, you can use divination to easily locate its position. The other prerequisite is that you can enter the spirit world. I have plenty of methods for this. I'll list the most common 3. The second method is to use a secret deed, ritual, and pray to Red Light Aer Moria. He represents authority and will. At a certain level, he grasps the relevant knowledge of the creatures in the spirit world and the locations in the spirit world. So Red Light of the 7 pure lights is named Aer Moria. The principle of a secret deed ritual is to adjust one's state, release one's mind and body, and align oneself with the target of the prayer bit by bit. Finally, an overlapping will occur, allowing one to acquire the corresponding knowledge. And this kind of alignment and overlapping is relative. While acquiring knowledge, my secrets will also be open to the target of the prayer. I can't trust Red Light. I have too many secrets. Klein's first reaction was to rule out the second approach. As for the first solution, there was also the chance of failure. Klein didn't have any unique items located where sea god Kalvatua hid itself. Either I use the help of the resistance and send something to Kalvatua, or I'll have to find the original owner of an item sacrificed to sea god from its believer. Furthermore, it has to be unique. Send something to Kalvatua. As he thought, Klein suddenly had an idea. He braced himself and considered it over and over again, thinking that there was a certain probability of success. After finishing his deed in the washroom, Klein washed his hands, took 4 steps counterclockwise, and went above the gray fog. He planned on attempting divination and received a revelation that there was danger, but it was manageable as long as it was handled properly. With all of this done, he returned to the living room and walked towards the reclining chair. Danitz immediately sat up and said with a dry laugh, "Is there something?" "Do you know the words to the prayer relating to the sea god?" Klein asked with an unperturbed tone. Danitz spread out his hands and suddenly hissed. "Dogshit." He softly cursed his injured arm and switched to smiling. "Yes, I've seen a few members of the resistance hold rituals. The details are, adorer of the sea and spirit world, guardian of the Rorstad archipelago, ruler of the undersea creatures, master of tsunamis and storms, the great Kalvatua." By the way, the 2 instances that it was effective were recited in Elvish. Adorer of the sea and spirit world. Its bearing is very low. It's not the same as my honorific name. That's true. I created it by copying it from the 7 true gods. Klein nodded gently and said, Do you know where there are empty warehouses and abandoned houses? Of course, every great pirate knows a few, Danitz replied without hesitation. Klein turned around and walked towards the coat rack. Take me there. To do what? Although Danitz was puzzled, he didn't dare ask. In the dock area, in a dirty and dilapidated warehouse. Danitz watched Jayaman Sparrow take out 3 candles and several metal bottles. Unable to hold back his curiosity any longer, he asked, What are you planning on doing? Klein didn't look back and replied very calmly, Sacrifice. To whom? Danitz pressed with interest. Klein set up the altar, took out an iron cigar case and calmly said, Kalvatua. His plan was to give something directly to see God Kalvatua. As long as Kalvatua accepted it, he could use divination and other methods to find its hiding place. As for whether or not Kalvatua would accept it, he had certainly considered it, believing that it was a definite possibility. As Kalvatua was currently on the verge of death, it was in a state of extreme madness with little sense of reason. It acted on instinct alone, and it might have a strong desire for the aura of the gray fog. Therefore, Klein was prepared to sacrifice an iron cigar case that was often placed above the gray fog. He wanted to see if Kalvatua would accept it or not, and if he didn't, he wouldn't suffer any losses. He could then pretend as though nothing had happened. Sacrifice to see God Kalvatua. At that moment, Danitz found his brain lacking. He couldn't comprehend what was on Jayaman Sparrow's mind. Are you crazy? How could it accept your sacrifice? Even if it's accepted, what would be the point? It's dying, and it's very dangerous, Danitz blurted out. Immediately, he added inwardly. No, Jayaman Sparrow isn't crazy, because he has always been crazy. Klein glanced at him and simply said, In this domain, I'm an expert. When it comes to sacrificial rituals, I'm an expert. Klein wasn't modest about this.